We follow up to our conversation with the bishop last night and talk to some key players in the diocese.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
It's been a tough time for the church over the last, I don't know, couple of months, but let's not forget it's been a tough time for the last couple of decades. If you didn't get a chance to see Bishop Tobin last night, go to foxprovidence.com for a pretty comprehensive conversation about it. My guess is that this program and last night's will air a couple of times over the fall when your host takes a day off, because I think these are important conversations. And although this program was taped yesterday afternoon immediately after the bishop, that's why we don't have any highlights of the bishop's conversation, because we bang taped the conversations back to back. We'll refer to some of what was discussed yesterday and last night. We're going to forget today's news, obviously, because we're recording yesterday, and get right into this conversation with some really key professionals in the Diocese of Providence who do things I didn't even know they did. Here's a headline that we have to remember is at the crux of this whole thing: the victims and the trauma that they feel. That's a borrowed CNN headline. Here's yet another version of a news story on the crisis.
The grand jury report in Pennsylvania implicated more than 300 priests and found more than 1,000 victims of sexual abuse.
I was horrified, as most all of us were, and the stories are very graphic, but I can't say that I'm surprised, unfortunately.
The issue of clergy sex abuse is a personal one for State Representative Carol Hagan McEntee. Her sister, Ann Hagan Webb, has spoken publicly about being abused as a child, and she pushed for a bill last year that would eliminate the civil statute of limitations for child sex abuse lawsuits.
To protect children against pedophiles and give them their day in court.
Like the cases in Pennsylvania, local cases of clergy sex abuse in New England have come to light decades after the fact, like Jim Scanlon, whose story was portrayed in the movie Spotlight.
I survived my shame, my guilt, and my fear.
Rhode Island does not have a criminal statute of limitations for sexual abuse against a child, but when decades have passed, it can be difficult to recover enough evidence for a prosecution. A lawsuit can be the next option, but a child victim in Rhode Island would need to file a lawsuit by the age of 25. McEntee's bill to extend that time period never got a vote.
The church lobbied heavily against the bill.
McEntee says this isn't just about the church, but all sexual abuse against children. She plans to fight to pass it again next year.
I do believe the extent of the problem is greater than any of us know.
Now, look, that conversation is about the statute of limitations in part. The two gentlemen that I have here, who I'm introducing now, are not legal experts and are not here to discuss the nuances of that. But I mean, there are some things I think that roll into and can color, and maybe you'll see here that the diocese is a little bit more accommodating to some of the concepts than you may think. Kevin O'Brien is the Director of Compliance for the Diocese of Providence, former major in the state police for how many years?
How many years? 23 years.
23 years.
Yes.
Thanks for your service to the state. I've always considered the state police to be the last bus of integrity, and I think most Rhode Islanders feel the same way. And Dr. Michael Hansen is a psychologist who works for the diocese, and his official title is Office of Outreach and Prevention. Welcome, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Quick reflection on the bishop's conversation with us last night. I thought he was pretty raw and pretty frank about things.
I'm not surprised, because in my daily interaction with the bishop, that's the way he is. And as far as I'm concerned, in my position, Office of Compliance, he allows me to do whatever I need to do whenever I need to do it, to go where I need to go to investigate, and he's always been very supportive.
Mike, do you have a thought on it?
Yes, I would like to comment on the bishop's courage and willingness to have these difficult conversations, and I think that he really shares his own opinions. He also is able to communicate when there's areas of struggle. He doesn't have clear answers. And I just really want to commend him for that.
You guys are on the payroll. Well, no, that's what some people, all right? Some people are watching this guy, they're on the payroll. And York's a Catholic, too. Remember that. It's a whole thing, We have a lot of that a challenge, though, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Catholic, yes?
Yes.
Catholic, yes. Catholic, yes. Catholic, I don't know. Objectivity about the challenge that the church is going through right now and being perceived as objective if you have a role in the church is a challenge, is it not?
I think, yes, the perception, the reality, no. I spent 23 years with the state police. As a member of the state police, I was involved in investigating members of the clergy. I think I have a pretty good idea, probably more so than anybody, as to the graphic nature and the details of some of those cases. As a Catholic, I was as disgusted and grossed out as anybody, and I won't. As the officer of compliance, I feel it's my duty to get to the bottom of it.
I want to dig into that because you wrote a very provocative op-ed piece that I think that everybody needs to read. But 30 seconds. What do you do? What is your job?
The Office of Outreach and Prevention essentially was established in response to the bishop's charter for the protection of children and young people. And so the primary responsibilities of that office are to reach out to those who have been hurt by members of the clergy in the past, and also to help to coordinate the safe environment training that we provide to all adults who have regular involvement with young people in our diocese, in our schools, in our parishes, as well as helping to coordinate the Circle of Grace program, which is an instructional curriculum for our young people.
All right, so you're a little bit of triage, but a lot of just programmatical good stuff.
Yes.
Got that.
Yeah.
And your role precedes you. It happened when the, hit the fan, more or less, right?
Yes, correct.
Years and years ago.
Years and years ago. Primary function of the Office of Compliance is investigatory, investigate any and all, and report all allegations of clergy sex abuse or sex abuse in the diocese by lay personnel or anybody affiliated in the diocese. We also have a role to create, implement the safe environment training programs. Now, this Friday actually is the 25th anniversary of the creation of the Office of Compliance. And it was created in direct response to the crisis, and it was actually 9 years prior to the Spotlight series and also the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People. So the Diocese of Providence was on top of this 9 years prior, and at that time they developed these safe environment programs and policies. And also they brought in an outsider. My predecessor was a former investigator for the Massachusetts State Police. They brought him in to investigate.
So you wrote an op-ed piece that, Rhode Island is not Pennsylvania. I think we have a headline. We could pop that up if we can pull it out of the machine. But I read it. I thought it was really, really well constructed. There's some 1,000 alleged grand jury reported out victims over 70 years in the state of Pennsylvania. Is there a number that Rhode Island is dealing with, a tangible number?
From the past?
Yeah, all the way, the whole kit and caboodle.
We're actually working on that right now. I'm going through the files to try and determine a number. I don't want to specifically, give you a number right now without that information. I can surmise it's nowhere near Pennsylvania. There's been some misinformation out there about that number. I've heard 38, I've heard 70 something, I've heard 148, I believe it is. My guess is probably 50 to 70, but I don't know yet. I'm finding out.
So what's the traffic like? I mean, you're the officer of compliance and you investigate malfeasance. Right. Are you sitting by the phone all day, watching the Red Sox, thinking, geez, I hope the phone doesn't ring? Or are you like, okay, what's the flow?
I'm not the Maytag repairman.
Right, right.
Now, I will tell you, since the Pennsylvania grand jury report came out, I am busier. Usually that happens. Something encourages victims to come forward. All right. I get maybe 5 to 10 calls per year regarding clergy sex abuse cases.
Each of which takes a thorough examining.
Right. And now, with that being said, it's been a lot like that tidal wave crashed years ago. It's gradually slowing down. Okay, we get less and less because I think the policies that we've implemented have been effective. But I think it's important to know, when I get a complaint, I immediately turn it over to law enforcement.
Yeah, I want to talk about the process
Right.
and how the diocese deals with this on both a retro and proactive level when we come back. Stay with us.
There have been calls for you to step down and resign. Do you plan to do that?
No. First of all, I have no reason at this point to step down and resign. Why would I do that? Again, I think I've responded to these incidents very responsibly and very transparently. But I serve at the discretion of the Pope. If he ever wants me to resign, I'll go in a heartbeat.
So Bishop Tobin spent time with Mike Montalgavo. That interview is at WPRI.com and, of course, on FoxProvidence.com, which I think merges on the same website. So you'll see the bishop from last night as well. And don't take those comments in a vacuum. I just wanted to give you a highlight and a flavor that he's out there and he's speaking about these things. Retroactivity versus proactivity. It almost seems in some ways that you handle retroactivity. In other words, as the Officer of Compliance, you're investigating problems. And Dr. Hansen, you're handling the psychology of some of those problems, but you're also out there in kind of a preventative I don't think you wake up in the morning saying, how can I prevent sexual abuse by priests, correct? I mean, you're thinking about programs that do what for people and their relationship with the church?
Well, first of all, in any conversation about individuals that have been hurt through the sexual abuse of members of the clergy, we certainly want to be very sensitive and compassionate, again, first and foremost to their needs, you know, and that's what I think is most important in this entire conversation. And there are still people who are hurting out there, even though, you know, these incidents happened many years ago. So the first order of business is to take the time to listen and to be supportive of individuals who want to talk, who come forward, who are looking for support, to assist them with financial help with their counseling, and we've been able to do that with many people.
And the diocese doled out millions.
Yes.
In terms of assistance on that level, correct?
That's correct. It's over $2 million.
Not just suit settlement money. You're talking about programmatical financing of whatever protocols or problem-solving solutions need, right?
Right. Primarily financial assistance for the individual's counseling process to promote their healing in all of this. And then also with other individuals that have contacted the office, they have sought immediate assistance, pay a rent bill, assistance with their heating bill. They may have run into some hard luck financially in other ways.
And that's aside from the abuse conversations here.
That's correct.
This is a full service, hey, life's hard type of place inside the diocese.
Yeah.
I get that. It seems that we have an interesting conversation that goes on regarding seeking help and or redress or whatever. Is it an inclination of somebody who's been victimized, mostly in the past here, because we don't have a lot of cases, right?
That's correct.
To come to the core organization that is at fault? In other words, are you doing a lot of psychological handling of the trauma that comes along with being abused by a priest 17 years ago, or?
Yeah, not directly. I certainly want to first and foremost, you know, try to be a good listener, Dan. And a number of these people who have come forward in more recent years, again, even though this happened a number of years ago, perhaps they were not listened to very effectively back then. So I really try to take the time to listen and to be as supportive as I can, to find out what their immediate needs are, again, to arrange for financial assistance.
Well, that tells me that the psychology of this whole thing has changed. It's no more defensive and redefining. Correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Correct.
It's just like, okay, we got another one. I mean, if there is another one, or there's one that we have to continue to take care of. But there's no more denying that this stuff, there's no more, right?
Yeah.
Everything's...
I'd like to say that unequivocally that the diocese has learned its lessons from 25 years ago. And now we have these measures in place. And I don't know, maybe I should explain quickly how the process works. A call comes in because somebody's been with a therapist who advised them to contact the diocese. I take the call, okay? I vet them out to a certain extent, and then I turn it over to law enforcement. And also, as of 2016, we added an additional measure of transparency when we signed a letter of understanding and protocol with the Attorney General's office. So now, not only do I report to the state police, I report to the Attorney General's office. After that, I let the law enforcement investigate the case. Now, eventually I will have to conduct an internal investigation, but I let them do their thing first. I also...
The great thing with you is you've got such a rap with those guys that you can interface, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
That's correct. And I know how the organization works, and
right.
we have a great relationship, not just with the state police, but also other law enforcement agencies. And then I turn the victim over to Dr. Hansen. I provide the contact information for Dr. Hansen, and I recommend that they get in touch with him. Do they always? No, but quite often they do.
You're not getting calls about new cases.
Very few.
Meaning, last week, Father Bill fondled me in the sanctuary. You're not, right?
I'm not. The cases that I'm getting have been historical in nature. They go back decades. A few years ago, we had a complaint from 1948-49.
Well, what's happened? Obviously, something good has happened. Behavior has changed? Or do we just have, and I hate to ask this question, but do we have a bunch of suppressed priests out there who just know that the, you know, what is up and we can't do this stuff anymore?
No, I think it goes well beyond that, Dan. I think that the level of awareness in the church and in the society at large has significantly increased, so that we have parents, individuals involved in the church and other sectors of society who have so much more information about how to recognize the potential for abuse, what signs to pay attention to.
Blind trust in the old days. Blind
yeah,
trust.
Right.
Father wants to take 12 boys to a camp. Okay, well, go with Father, you know.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of a thing. Now it's, well, Father, where are you? Not that Father can't take 12 boys to a camp, but I bet your Father's not thinking about taking 12 boys to a camp this year, right? I mean, so there's that kind of a thing going on. Everything is more formal and supervised.
I get calls all the time.
About?
From pastors, from principals, teachers, volunteers, parents, inquiring about possible safe environment violations. Or they want to know, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Looking for guidance from my office. So the parishioners out there are really the eyes and the ears of the diocese, and they help us tremendously in the child protection field.
Do any of the clergy come to you to say, I need help? Where are the priests, even though the cases have died down or stopped, where are the priests? I can't believe that there are still some problematical issues out there. Where does a priest go if, you know, before he pulls the trigger on a bad behavioral decision? Is there a place in the diocese that he goes to?
Yeah, I'm certainly a resource to priests in our diocese, Dan.
Have you had pre-game conversations to problems?
Not specific to this kind of problem, and I didn't come on board officially until 2003. And I think, by and large, we were able to clean up that situation. But certainly priests will contact me and talk about, you know, how to live celibacy in a healthy way, what kind of supports would be helpful, balancing, you know, work and their social life. And so those kinds of issues come to my attention. I try to be as supportive as I can to priests.
So when we come back, we will touch base on the length of time it takes for a victim to come, you know, front and center to their own issues here when we come back. Stay with us. So the moral of the story here is that you should know the Diocese of Providence is proactive in terms of its psychological and investigatable help here. Here's the thing. Again, I'm not. Because it's not your role. I don't want to draw you guys into a conversation about the statute of limitations argument that's going on in the State House. So, given that we're not going to get into the weeds on that, there is a length of time, though, that victims need or take before they expose their situation. You're still going to get a call in a month
Yes.
from somebody who says back in 1977, right?
Yes,
it's
correct.
going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And because of the length of time, you don't anymore, even if, I'm guessing you didn't because you were so, in your state police career, smart about these things, and your psychological understanding is not going to judge. But it does not, the 30 years separating the first phone call does not negate the reality of the experience.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
People
Yes.
carry this stuff around for a long time. Are you weighing in on those matters? In terms of the whole big picture and
Yeah, to some extent.
the
I would
legal
say.
discussions?
Yeah, I mean, that's not our area of expertise.
No, it's not your,
of
and I don't
course,
expect you to get into that. But I mean, there's a truth that I think needs to be acknowledged
Yeah.
here. And you guys, from your own, in your own silos, are clear on it. That if something happened 30 years ago and you're hearing it for the first time, it doesn't mean it's not legit.
Yeah, it's interesting, at least my own personal perspective on the matter is that, yes, I think that individuals do need more time because the reality is that people who have been hurt by this in the past usually take years to come forward to make a report. But it also is that very factor can be used as an argument against a lengthy statute of limitations due to the reconstructive nature of memory. You know, how are you going to go back 50 years and figure out exactly what happened?
Again, I don't want to draw you into a place you don't want to be, but the hurt and the reality and the psychological trauma and the long-term effects of it are real, no matter where in your lifetime timeline you finally come to grips with it. Correct?
That's
or
correct.
report it.
I would agree. Yes, and it's interesting because, and I think of a case that I had a couple of years ago. I think I had mentioned there was a gentleman came in, and it was a case from 1948-49, and it was a second-degree sexual assault. That's what he was alleging. I investigated. Very difficult to go back with the
Sure. I mean, how do you find those files, right?
Correct. The offender was alive,
Yeah.
in his 90s, and interviewed him. Now, what I did during my investigation, I believed that the individual was credible. I took that information and I presented it to the Bishop's Advisory Board, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's comprised of former Attorney General, former DCYF Director.
Well, that'll be our next show. I'm actually out of time. It's fascinating to talk to you guys, and I don't mean to cut the answer short, but I'm absolutely out of time. I want to thank you for coming, because I just don't think that enough people know that the work is being done inside the diocese, and I hope this opens a relationship with us and not a one-time stand. Appreciate it. Thanks for your good work.
Thank you.
Final word when we come back. You know, if you bump into a fellow Catholic, or anybody's interested in the church's issues, and they didn't see this show, have them take a look at foxprovidence.com, because I think there's a lot of information about the diocese and what it's doing proactively and retroactively that a lot of people don't know about. It might give a little bit of I don't know, calm in context to folks, right? We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.